Deep in the collective memory of the Korean public, there's one actor whose villainous roles linger like a dark, inescapable cloud. The moment he appears on screen, you know he's either a ruthless gangster boss or a spine-chilling psycho. Even in the rare cases where he plays a decent guy, audiences can't help but secretly hope he kicks the bucket early. No one embodies evil quite like Park Sung-woong, and the film we're about to talk about? It's the crowning jewel of his career, a role where he takes Twisted to the next level. When this film hit theaters, he became the nightmare of 30 million Korean women. Right from the opening scene, the air is thick with tension and dread. Every time it rains at night, single women walking the streets of Seoul become helpless prey for a mysterious predator. Known only as the Rainy Night Butcher, Kang-chun prowls in a black raincoat, wielding a massive blunt weapon, striking under the cover of pouring rain and vanishing into the shadows. In less than 3 months, 8 women go missing in the southeastern district of Seoul. The police are completely stumped. No suspect, no bodies, no leads. Fear spreads like a storm cloud over the entire city. Detective Tae-soo notices a pattern. Every attack happens during a rainy night. Kang-chun chooses rainy nights for one reason: the rain washes away all traces of the crime. This time, he targets a pregnant woman. Her phone rang. It was her husband, Sung-hyun, calling. Kang-chun smirks, casually tosses the phone out of the car window. In that split second of distraction, he slammed into the car ahead. The furious driver jumped out, shouting and cursing, but Kang-chun ignored him and sped off. The driver's left confused but decides to call the cops. Meanwhile, Tae-soo and his partner were already on the road when they heard about the hit and run. Since they had no other leads, they figured, why not swing by and take a look? But the second Tae-soo arrives, something feels off. Based on the skid marks, it's clear the front car cut in suddenly, probably trying to stage a crash for insurance fraud. After calling out the driver's bluff, Tae-soo starts wondering if the front car was so badly damaged. Why did the rear car flee instead of reporting it? While scanning the area, he spots a phone tossed by the roadside, clearly a woman's phone. He immediately alerts HQ. Suspecting a kidnapping, Tae-soo and his team begin a full-scale sweep of the area. Meanwhile, Kang-chun has already driven deep into the mountains. There, with a power drill in hand, he was poised to make his move on the woman. Hours of torture later, he finally smiles with twisted satisfaction. To him, a rainy night doesn't just erase blood and evidence. The smell of fresh blood in the rain brings him pure joy. Back in the city, Tae-soo and his team keep searching, even as night falls. It wasn't until Tae-soo spotted a mountain road off to the side that he stepped out into the pouring rain, and there, in the muddy ground, he saw fresh tire tracks. He figured the car must have passed through just moments ago. Definitely suspicious, so they followed the tracks in pursuit. Sure enough, at a traffic light up the road, Tae-soo spots the suspect vehicle. He blocks it just before it drives off. One look at the busted front and he knows this is the hit-and-run car. Tae-soo identifies himself as a cop. Kang-chun, cool as ever, grips the steering wheel, smirks, rolls up the window and floors the gas pedal. Tae-soo moves fast, yanking the door open before it locks. His partners swerved in and used their car to block the road ahead. Trapped, Kang-chun has no choice but to step out and cooperate. He stayed cool and collected, but the moment Tae-soo popped the trunk and saw the array of tools inside, a quiet sense of dread crept in. Then Tae-soo finds a bloodied clump of hair under the seat. Tae-soo stared at Kang-chun in disbelief, while Kang-chun met his gaze without a hint of fear, his eyes slowly rising, a mocking smile playing on his lips. The police sees Kang-chun's vehicle for a full inspection. As expected, the interior is soaked in blood. Forensics confirms the DNA matches several of the missing women. The station breathes a sigh of relief. They finally nailed the Rainy Night Butcher. Tae-soo's boss tells him to prepare for a promotion and a raise. Just then, his brother-in-law called. His sister Sung-kyun still hadn't come home, and her phone wasn't picking up. Tae-soo brushes it off, saying her phone probably just died. But when his colleague checks the phone found at the scene and it matches his sister's name, Tae-soo freezes. He tells himself it's just a coincidence, until he sees the registered info. It really was Sung-kyun's phone. Tae-soo bolts to the holding cell to confront Kang-chun.
너 도대체 뭐야? 아니지? 내가 잘못한 거지?
His instincts scream the truth. Kang-chun is the killer, and Sung-kyun was his 9th victim. His colleagues assumed Kang-chun's contempt had triggered Tae-soo's rage, but Tae-soo can't explain. He rushes to his sister's home. Sung-hyun anxiously asks what's going on, but Tae-soo stays silent. He heads straight to the bedroom, plucks a hair from her pillow, and begs her toothbrush. Sung-hyun watches, dread creeping in. Tae-soo tries to comfort him, but his trembling voice says it all. Sung-hyun collapses in despair. As expected, forensic tests confirmed that the DNA found in Kang-chun's car was a perfect match for Sung-kyun. The news hit Tae-soo like a bolt of lightning, dealing him yet another devastating blow. What crushed him even more was Kang-chun's unshakable composure. He sat through the entire interrogation without saying a single word. Police searched Kang-chun's home, and it didn't take long for the K9 unit to sense something. One shovel into the soil unearthed a woman's severed head. When Tae-soo heard the news, he rushed to the scene, swearing he'd dig up every inch of earth to find his sister's remains. But in the end, all they uncovered were 3 unidentified female corpses. Sung-kyun was nowhere to be found. Back in the interrogation room, Kang-chun showed not a shred of guilt. On the contrary, he seemed proud of how well he'd hidden the bodies. That smugness sent Tae-soo into a fury.
말해. 우리 숙희 여지죠?
이런다고 내 말해줄 것 같아?
Tae-soo resorted to harsh, aggressive interrogation tactics, but not a single useful word came out of it. That's when Tae-soo realized force wouldn't crack him. If he wanted to know where his sister was, he'd have to beg. So he swallowed his pride and pleaded with Kang-chun to reveal Sung-kyun's whereabouts. But his desperate, broken state only delighted Kang-chun. The thrill of killing, the helplessness of the police, and the anguish of the victims' families had all fueled Kang-chun's twisted sense of satisfaction.
말했잖아. 찾아보라.
His arrogance and utter disregard for human life finally made Tae-soo see him for what he truly was, a monster. Tae-soo was seconds from pulling the trigger. Unable to bear it any longer, his colleagues rushed to calm him down, urging him not to ruin his future over a devil like Kang-chun. Kang-chun sensed Tae-soo's turmoil, leaned in toward the barrel of the gun, and smiled provocatively. Thankfully, a fellow officer burst through the door just in time, giving Tae-soo a way out. In Tae-soo's heart, the law was a boundary he could never cross. It was like a chain holding him back, binding him, but powerless against a monster like Kang-chun who played by no rules. Despite overwhelming evidence, Kang-chun still refused to reveal where the other missing women were buried. When police took him to a crime scene for identification, crowds of reporters and victims' families had already gathered. They hated Kang-chun with every fiber of their being. Many would have torn him apart on the spot if they could. With a single mocking gesture, Kang-chun sent one of them collapsing in fear. He knew these grieving families were full of rage but lacked the courage to act on it. Tae-soo watched from a distance, just as helpless. The law held him back, and if he crossed that line, he'd be no different from Kang-chun. But at another crime scene, Sung-kyun's husband, Sung-hyun, had reached his breaking point. He seized the moment and lunged at Kang-chun with murderous intent. Quick-thinking officers intercepted him, tripping him to the ground and restraining him before he could act. Seeing Kang-chun's smug face only twisted the knife in Sung-hyun's heart. As his brother-in-law, Tae-soo didn't even know how to offer comfort. He had been a cop for over a decade, yet he couldn't even protect his own family. Guilt and self-loathing crushed him from within. The bitter irony? Though Kang-chun was sentenced to the maximum penalty, South Korea had long abolished the death penalty. For him, it was just a new playground. And Tae-soo, the one who solved the case and lost his own sister, was passed over for promotion due to his emotional outbursts, while his superiors climbed the ranks with ease. But no one suffered more than Sung-hyun. He only learned after the fact that Sung-kyun had called him that day to share the news they were about to have a baby. Both Sung-kyun and their unborn child were brutally taken from him, and he was powerless to avenge them. Crushed by grief, Sung-hyun once considered taking his own life to reunite with his wife and child. But then, staring at a photo of the 3 of them, something inside him changed. A fire ignited. He swore he would never rest until he avenged his family. Unlike Sung-hyun, Tae-soo eventually came to terms with reality, but one thing still haunted him: the location of his sister's body. So every month, he visited Kang-chun in prison, hoping to pry out even the smallest clue. But after 3 years, Kang-chun still wouldn't budge. Tae-soo's patience wore thin. From the warden, he learned that Kang-chun was like a rabid beast. No inmate dared share a cell with him. Those who did either ended up with broken limbs, missing ears, or even blinded. The warden was at his wit's end.
왜? 들어오시게?
그만하고 빨리 자라.
Not long after, a deadly gang clash broke out, and that incident became the turning point. In broad daylight, the boss of the Songbuk gang was assassinated by a man in black. Police believe the prime suspect is Kim Min-suk, the gang's number 2, but Tae-soo, who's handled countless gang cases, knows Kim Min-suk's character well. If this were an internal power grab, Kim would never make such a bold, reckless move. Through a series of investigations, Tae-soo zeroes in on a name buried in the Songbuk gang's files: Sung-hyun, the gang's original founder and true boss. Years ago, two underlings, Fat Bo and Kim Min-suk, betrayed Sung-hyun to the cops, landing him a life sentence and stealing the gang he built from the ground up. But how could Sung-hyun, locked away in prison, possibly have orchestrated Fat Bo's murder? Tae-soo digs into Sung-hyun's parole records and discovers that during a 3-day release for his mother's funeral, Sung-hyun had contact with someone, likely an accomplice. What Tae-soo never expected was to see his brother-in-law Sung-hyun on the surveillance footage. 3 years ago, after his sister's tragic death, Sung-hyun was consumed by grief. He told Tae-soo he couldn't face him anymore, and from that day on, they cut all ties. Tae-soo heads to Sung-hyun's home, only to find it in ruins, nothing like the warm, loving place it used to be. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appears. Tae-soo gives chase, gun drawn, only to find it's Sung-hyun himself. Before Tae-soo can react, Sung-hyun bolts. Tae-soo returned to the house, only to find it filled with training equipment. That's when it hits him. Sung-hyun never let go of his thirst for revenge. He's been training relentlessly, preparing for the day he could kill Kang-chun with his own hands. Inside, Tae-soo also uncovers a carefully laid out plan. Turns out, Sung-hyun noticed Sung-hyun and Kang-chun were in the same prison. Using Sung-hyun's brief release, he showed him proof of Fat Bo and Kim Min-suk's betrayal. The two struck a deal. Sung-hyun would take out Sung-hyun's enemies on the outside, and in return, Sung-hyun would eliminate Kang-chun for him. Now Tae-soo realizes Sung-hyun's next target is Kim Min-suk. But the hit doesn't go smoothly. Sung-hyun's car wouldn't start, and within moments, he was surrounded by enforcers from the Songbuk gang. Outnumbered and cornered, he's about to be finished off until Tae-soo fires a warning shot, scattering the attackers and giving Sung-hyun a chance to escape. Following Sung-hyun's move, the honor-bound Sung-hyun prepared to keep his word to take out Kang-chun for him. But the once legendary hitman stands no chance. Kang-chun, a bloodthirsty beast, leaves him barely clinging to life. The guards rushed in just in time and stopped Kang-chun in his tracks. For withholding information, Tae-soo was suspended by his superiors and forced to reflect. Meanwhile, Sung-hyun is still waiting for his moment. He sets fire to the hospital to create chaos and attempts to abduct Kang-chun in the confusion. Awakened by the fire alarm, Kang-chun, physically powerful as ever, snaps his handcuffs. Kills 2 guards, and makes a run for it. But Sung-hyun finally gets his hands on him. By the time Tae-soo arrived at the hospital, all he saw was Sung-hyun getting ready to take Kang-chun away. Tae-soo understood what Sung-hyun intended. He didn't want him to stain his hands with Kang-chun's blood and fall into a pit he could never climb out of. But after a tense chase, Sung-hyun managed to escape. One of his goals was to force Kang-chun to reveal the location of his wife's remains, a knot in his heart that had never loosened. He had failed to protect the woman he loved. The least he could do was ensure she had a proper burial. Facing someone just as unhinged, Kang-chun knew Sung-hyun wasn't bluffing, he really would kill him, so he pretended to lead him to the burial site in the mountains. When Sung-hyun saw that his wife and unborn child were buried there, he broke down, heart shattered. But Kang-chun seized the moment. He pulled out a wrench he'd hidden and slammed it into Sung-hyun's skull. Sung-hyun collapsed, motionless. Turns out, this wasn't a burial site at all, it was a spot Kang-chun had used to stash his murder tools. What made it even more infuriating was that Kang-chun pulled out the very tool he had used to kill Sung-hyun's wife. In unbearable agony, Sung-hyun could think of nothing but his wife and child. He just wanted to know where they were.
저 바위쯤인가?
Ignoring the agony, he crawled toward the place Kang-chun had pointed to. Those few meters felt like 3 years. His love for his wife ran so deep that, even beyond death, he just wanted to find her body. Kang-chun watched with cruel delight, feeding off Sung-hyun's suffering. That's when Tae-soo arrived and found Sung-hyun lying in a pool of blood. He realized Sung-hyun, just like him, had been unable to let go of the need to find Soo-kyun, but he never imagined Sung-hyun would go this far, never return.
수경이가 여기 있대요. 조금만 기다려. 죄송해요.
Sung-hyun's final words shattered Tae-soo completely. Because of Kang-chun, his sister and her entire family were gone. There was no time for grief. Tae-soo took off after the wounded Kang-chun, fists flying in a storm of rage against the monster who had destroyed everything. Just then, a wave of police backup arrived. As Tae-soo picked up a rock, ready to crush Kang-chun's skull, a colleague shouted for him to stop. Tae-soo hesitated, thinking of his duty, his oath. Slowly, he dropped the rock, but Kang-chun, even in defeat, couldn't resist mocking him again. That final taunt snapped the last chain inside Tae-soo's heart. He didn't care about justice anymore. He just wanted to end this. Then a gunshot rang out. The police had fired at Tae-soo. One of his brothers-in-arms screamed in fury, demanding to know why they'd fired at a cop trying to stop a murderer instead of at the killer himself. The world felt upside down. Monsters like Kang-chun could slaughter families and still enjoy government protection, while the victims' loved ones were left shattered and voiceless. In the name of law and order, the police had turned on their own. The betrayal cut deep. As they prepared to escort Kang-chun away, one of Tae-soo's fellow officers gave him a silent nod, the kind only a true brother would understand. Tae-soo got the message loud and clear. He reached for the gun on his brother's belt and ended the monster's life with his own hands.